It's late July and time for an update on how the garden is growing. Well, I think the best way to describe it is that this is the time of year where the garden goes from being rather sparse looking to overflowing and in some cases overwhelming as it takes over garden beds and climbs over the tops of support structures. And in fact, if you look at the greenhouse, you can see that the tomatoes that are going in there are topping out and reaching the ceiling, and that's after I've pruned them several times. So that's pretty indicative of where the rest of the garden is at this point. Things like the peppers growing in pots here on the deck are doing fairly well now that the sun has finally made an appearance. Take that with a grain of salt though. When we get sun, it's not like what the East Coast has been getting. We're getting up into the mid-70s, but everything's responding well as a consequence. In fact, right there is one of the peppers that are forming. These are sweet Italian peppers, and they seem to be doing well up here on the deck. I think that the heat reflects up off of the decking and actually is probably a better environment for them than actually out into the garden bed. In the back section of the garden, we have our Silets tomatoes, which are in the black pots. These, if you remember, are tomatoes that I babied through the winter and had an extra early start. As a consequence, they're full of fruit and are actually producing ripe tomatoes now, despite our very, very cool summer that we've had to date. The rest of the tomatoes are over here in the newest section of the garden. And in fact, as you can see, they're blocking the view from most of the rest of the garden. Don't worry though, I'm going to take you for a walk down below and show you the cucumber patch. But in general, the tomato patch doing very well. They're loaded with flowers and fruit, although I will say that there are more flowers than fruit at this point. Such a cool spring we've had in summer that everything is very slow in getting going. Okay, let's take a walk down into the garden. So we're now in the oldest section of garden, and in front of me here is the bush beans. These are purple potted beans and new for me this year. I've not grown these before. I'm kind of excited about them. They're doing very well. We're flowering, and this is actually the second group. The ones down below are about a week older and are actually starting to set some green beans, so we should be in green beans pretty soon. Behind them is the giant potato patch, and it is starting, you can see here where I've been digging a little bit into it, but it's also starting to lie down, which means that the potatoes are on their way towards really fattening up and hardening up the skin, making them ready for storage and harvesting later. So in this bed here, it's kind of sparse. I had not such great germination, but these are my parsnips, and they're coming along, and I think that these will actually grow bigger because they're actually more widely spaced than I normally do. And in this patch, I've also got a volunteer golden Swiss chard. Yeah, I don't know where he came from, but he's beautiful. Seems to be growing quite happily here, so I've just left him alone. The strawberry patch has been a bit of a disappointment this year. We've had such a cool spring and summer that the pollination wasn't good, and so I'm hoping that we get a good second crop. This is a day neutral variety, Ozark Beauty, and I'm hoping that I get a good second crop out of them to make up for the loss of having a good crop in the spring. In fact, we had no crop this spring. This is the broccoli patch. It's looking really not nice at the moment because I've been stripping it of leaves to feed the chickens. However, let's see if I can get closer to it here. You can see that it's still producing lots of side shoots, and so we are still enjoying broccoli even though these plants look pretty ragged. They're still producing for me. And that's really one of the secrets to getting the most out of your garden, is to use everything. If you can't compost it, eat it. There's something else you can do with it. In this case, feeding the chickens. So we have some carrots growing, and we have our cranberries, which are growing well, although they're not going to fruit for me this year. Again, I think it was lack of pollination because of our weather this year. Behind me, sorry, didn't mean to make you seasick there. Growing on the vertical growth support structure are the runner beans. These are sunset, and They are starting to set flowers, and they are really doing their vegetation growth phase at the moment. This will become a wall of green and beautiful sunset colored flowers soon, and produce lots of beans throughout the rest of the summer. Below it we have Swiss chard growing, and I've been harvesting on this fairly hard. It's been doing very well. I've had a little bit of bug damage, but not a whole lot. It's been holding up pretty well. I wish I could say the same for my basil. It had a terrible time this spring. It does not like having lack of sun, and of course that's exactly what we had this year. It's looking better now. If I had taken a picture of this earlier, you would have been really sad for this plant, because they were all getting black leaves and dying back, and now that the sun is coming out, they're rejuvenating, so there's some hope for them. There are some peppers in this patch too, but they're not doing nearly as well as the ones up on the deck, mainly because they don't get as much sun. And then growing behind them are my sugar snap peas. These are Cascadia, and they have been producing well for about a month now, and they're still producing, although judging by the leaves turning yellow, I'm ready to let these go to seed. So I'm going to quit harvesting from these. Essentially the last harvest I did was about a day ago, and I'm going to let these just start setting seed. In this bed here next to the purple potted beans, I have some dill and some more carrots. And then behind here is the Three Sisters planting, and as you can see, everything is just a mass of vegetation. This first bed has bodacious corn, which is a little bit later, and both beds have pinto beans and small sugar pie pumpkins. And we have lots and lots of fruit in the pumpkin patch, but a lot of them are not getting pollinated well. I'm actually having to resort to hand pollination, and that seems to be working. I've got a couple now that are not only set but staying and producing on to form fruits. This is precocious corn, and it actually got a little stunted because of the cool start we had this year, but it is tasseled, and we've got silks. And again, I'm hand pollinating by just shaking. Generally I just come along and shake the tassels, which releases the pollens, basically mimicking what wind would do for pollination. Let's go into the greenhouse and check out the tomatoes in the green. These are the celebrity tomatoes that are growing in the greenhouse, and as you can see, they are pretty much, well, it is an indeterminate, and they grow with great abandon. But this particular variety is a tomato that is, well, it's tree-like in its growth. It's got a really sturdy trunk and really gets growing pretty aggressively. There are fruits formed. Let's see if I can get up here and show that to you. And there's more throughout the plant, but it's so lush it's hard to put my hand into it and find it for you. But these are a mid to late season tomato. That's why they're in the greenhouse. In my climate, I just cannot grow these outside. What happens is that they really get to the green fruit stage, and then the fall rains come, and the plants just literally melt down from molds and mildews, and nothing. If you like green tomatoes, I guess that's an okay outcome, but I like them ripe. So these are the Silets tomatoes, and they are really performing well for me. I don't know if you can see how much fruit are actually on these tomatoes, but they are loaded with them. There's green fruit everywhere, and in fact I'm starting to get ripe tomatoes off of these. So lots coming from this plant, these plants I should say, and thank goodness, because the rest of the tomatoes are really taking their time getting going this year.